As we inch towards the start of the college football season, I felt right to put together my own top 25, and I try to bring a little bit more objectivity to it. And this is an exercise that could only be so objective. There's going to be a lot of opinions in it, but I tried to focus on two specific things. How did they finish last season? Where were they ranked? And then what's changed since then? How many guys left? How much of their talent did they retain? How much did they add through both recruiting and the transfer portal? So where did they end, and where have they gone since then? I tried not to look at, well, if I break down their schedule, I think they'll lose these couple games because it's a tough schedule. So I shouldn't have them this high. This is not a prediction. I'll have a separate video that is a playoff prediction. This is, where do these teams deserve to be ranked entering this 2025 season based on who they are, who they were last year, and now what's the difference in who they are now. So without further ado, let's just dive right in. So the first thing I think that'll jump out to everyone is have Penn State rather than Ohio State or Texas, number one. And while I knew that would look bold, I didn't do it to be bold, but I think it should be kind of obvious and maybe like fair. So they're, of the teams that finished in the top 5 last year, they returned by far the most talent. And they're the only one who finished in the top 5 last year that brings back their quarterback, Drew Aller. Drew Aller finished with over 3,300 passing yards last year. And now they add 3 different receivers through the transfer portal. But the one that stood out to me was Syracuse wide receiver, Trevor Pena, who had 941 yards for the Orange. Obviously, Syracuse is going to have to rebuild, losing him and so many others. But Penn State's the beneficiary. I think their offense could actually take a decent step forward. Now their defense loses Abdul Carter, led the nation in tackles for loss and had 12 sacks. Picked number 3 overall to the Giants in the NFL draft. That's a big loss. And they lost Tom Allen, their defensive coordinator, but they also added Jim Knowles, the defensive coordinator from Ohio State. Quite the coup. And I think if Tom Allen's top 5, I think Jim Knowles is certainly top 5 defensive coordinator in all of college football. So while you'd rather have continuity, I don't think that's really a loss there. Their defense might take a slight step back, losing Abdul Carter, but overall, they should be better than they were last year. They were top 5 last year. Ohio State loses a lot of guys, including quarterback Will Howard. Notre Dame, they were very good last year, went to the national championship. I have them 3. They're replacing their quarterback. Texas, they're replacing a lot of guys. They had a lot of players picked in that draft, but they're, of course, very talented. They've got the Manning effect with Arch Manning. So I think they belong in the top 4, but they really don't belong above Penn State, Ohio State, Notre Dame. Obviously, Ohio State and Notre Dame played for the national championship last year. The next team that kind of stands out is maybe a bit interesting or not conventional in my rankings would be Arizona State all the way up at number 5. But this is kind of like Penn State in that, look, they finished 7th last year and they bring back 17 guys, including quarterback Sam Leavitt. So why wouldn't I have them that high? The SP Plus rankings don't have them very high. They finished just 35th, and they're only 22nd now in the SP Plus advanced analytics rankings. But that's not how I'm doing this. I'm doing this based on how good were they last year, how much better or worse should they be this year. Let's just stick to those at least like kind of loose facts and not just layer on too many opinions. They were really good last year. They were number 7 in the nation last year, and they should only be better now. So I think that Big 12 is some people call it a random number generator. There's a lot of parity, and that's true. But to me, Arizona stands out as the favorite in what should be a very competitive conference. Interesting note, Sam Leavitt grew up a Clemson fan. Wide receiver Noble Johnson transferred to Arizona State. So that'll be an interesting duo. We'll see if Noble Johnson makes an impact. After that, I have Clemson and Georgia, and I'll say I originally had Georgia 6, Clemson 7. It felt wrong after Georgia beat up on Clemson pretty bad in the opener last year. It felt wrong to now flip them after Georgia really had the better season and won head-to-head. But I showed this to a couple of Georgia fans before I did the video, before I finalized it. And without my prompting, they both said, Georgia seems high. Clemson should be above Georgia. And I said, okay, I thought that too, but I thought I was being biased. I said, no. Georgia lost a lot of players, and certainly they did. Carson Beck maybe didn't finish the year the best, but in that game against Clemson, he looked like in NFL, just elite accuracy, fitting the ball into tight windows. It was really, really impressive. And we'll see if Gunnar Stockton, their new quarterback, can do that, but we haven't seen it quite yet. We'll see what, they won national championships without elite quarterback play. So they certainly belong in the top 10. I think 7 is very fair, but they finished 6. They lose a lot. So moving them down to 7, I think is probably fair. Alabama, we don't know about their quarterback situation, but they do bring back a fair amount of talent otherwise. I think the next really interesting duo here is Illinois at 9, Indiana at 10. I have them both above where they finished last season. I think this will catch some people's attention. I know some people will disagree with this, but here's my logic behind it. So Illinois brings back 16 starters, including Luke Altmaier, who's a very good quarterback. I'm not looking at their schedule too much when I do this, but as I go through it, there's maybe 2 games I think they lose. I think they have a real shot to make the playoff. They will play Duke early in the year, and that maybe is the swing game there. But I think it's a legitimate playoff contender. And even if you don't look at their schedule, they ended the year by beating South Carolina, who I also have in this top 13 on this page. I think they're a really good team, and I don't know how much more they could do to show the nation that now they've never really, Illinois as a program, followed up a good season with another one. So this will be proof as a program, but I don't want to ding them because Illinois historically isn't good at football. I want to credit them because last year's Illinois team was very good. They bring back most of that talent. I think that's the fair way to do it. I think they deserve to be top 10. Indiana's interesting because they actually do lose a lot of guys, only 8 returning starters, but they were active in the portal. They bring in quarterback Fernando Mendoza from Cal. He'll have better talent around him, so I think he can elevate. So that's a team that made the playoff last year. I think both of those teams are really going to be in the mix. I think they're both really good. And at least as of now, deserve to be in the top 10. Boise State, not going to get as much attention outside of the P4, but they bring back a lot of talent, including the quarterback. They don't really deserve to fall. The big faller on this page, and you can only fall so far if you're in the top 13, but Oregon finished 3. I have them all the way down at 12. That's because they lose most of the team, most of the starters, only bringing back 5. Dylan Gabriel's also gone. I think that's a big loss. I think they're kind of a fringy playoff team. They're certainly in the top tier of the Big Ten generally as a program and as a team this year. But I don't think they deserve to be above Illinois or Indiana, given what they accomplished last year minus all these losses. I think that drops them a little bit below them. Could you have them at anywhere 8, 9, 10, and that be fair? I think that's certainly fine for Oregon. I'm just a little lower on them. And then at 13, South Carolina. Obviously, they had a very impressive year last year, finishing with 9 wins, beating Clemson in Death Valley, all very impressive, but they lose a ton on defense. 5 players drafted off that defense. I think the defense probably takes a step back. The offense could be very good. Quarterback Lenore Sellers is back. Nick Harbor, the wide receiver, has a pretty high upside. He quit running track to focus on football. He could have a breakout year. I could see this offense being really, really good. I think there's a pretty decent downside risk on the defense. So I kind of have them in the mix with this next tier of ACC teams. We'll see on this slide. So let's just continue. So you have South Carolina, and that really, skip over Miami, that really kind of just blends in with South Carolina, LSU, Texas A&M, Tennessee, and Ole Miss. And I have them all below Illinois and Indiana, which feels a little weird, but will one of these SEC teams make the playoff? Probably, right? There's going to be at least 4 SEC teams in the playoff. That's just how it goes. But as of now, I think Indiana and Illinois, if you ask me between Illinois and pick one of these SEC teams, I'm taking Illinois. Same with Indiana. But if you say, hey, Illinois or Indiana to make the playoff, or one of those two versus all of these SEC teams, of course, I'll pick one of these SEC teams as a group. But individually, I think they deserve to be ranked a little bit lower than those 2 Big Ten teams. LSU is interesting. They don't actually bring back that much talent, despite what feels like a lot of offseason hype and positivity. They lost a lot. Only 7 starters returning, but one of them is Garrett Nussmeier, arguably the best quarterback in the nation returning. Him, Cade Klubnik, maybe Manning, maybe Drew Aller. So top 4 quarterback most likely. So that's huge. And then they had the number 1 transfer portal class. So that combines, they're probably still in the mix. they are in the top 15. A&M brings back a lot of talent, including their quarterback Marcel Reed and 15 starters. They weren't as good last year, though, so they kind of slot in there. Tennessee, playoff team last year, but only brings back 10 starters. Joey Aguilar from App State, he's their quarterback now. I think he could be good, but we don't really know how good. He certainly didn't look good against Clemson playing for App State. So we'll see what that is. I'm a little lower on Tennessee, and then Ole Miss loses a lot, but they're always active in the transfer portal. Lane Kiffin sort of has a system where the offense is always good, so they kind of belong in that mix as well. Again, I think one of those teams, South Carolina, LSU, A&M, Tennessee, or Ole Miss, one of them makes the playoff, but I have no clue which, and they kind of belong in this 13 to 18 grouping. Below that, you see a handful of Big 12 teams, Iowa State leading that trio there with Iowa State, Kansas State, Texas Tech, and they're all very different in that while they all bring back quarterbacks, and I think that's kind of why I'm positive about them. I think any one of them could really challenge Arizona State for that conference title. I see those three as like legitimate challengers or the main challengers. But Rocco Becht and Iowa State, they bring back the most returning talent from last year. Kansas State, on the other hand, they bring back a lot of talent, but they're also just very consistent, reliable. You know they're going to be top 20, top 25 type team. They do it every year. And then Texas Tech, they weren't as good last year, but they brought in a very expensive transfer portal class. They've got some oil money. They're investing it in football. So you think they've got a lot of potential both this year, but maybe more so long-term. So I think any one of those three is a great challenger. Baylor barely missed out on my top 25. They bring back a lot of talent as well. I could see maybe those four in Arizona State as sort of the top one or two tiers in the Big 12. I could see any of them winning it. Then I closed this top 25 out with ACC schools. So we have SMU, who made the playoff last year, Louisville, who beat Clemson last year, Duke, who beat Clemson last time they played them and won 9 games last year, and Georgia Tech, who only went 7-5, but I think is very good. So SMU brings back quarterback Kevin Jennings, who I think is a dark horse Heisman contender. I think that offense could be elite. I think they're really, really good on offense, but they lose all but I think it was 2 starters on defense. I could see that defense taking a big step back. I could see them in a lot of shootouts. Their schedule gets tougher. I don't really think they're a playoff. I think they're good enough to make the playoff, but I don't think they will make it this year if I'm predicting. I think they deserve to be ranked, though. We'll see if they can sort of defeat the we've arrived mentality. They're going to have to be humble. They're going to have to keep working hard, keep that sort of good vibes and good mentality they had all of last season. I think they can do it. We'll see. I'm basically equally high on Louisville. They also return 8 guys. They bring in Miller Moss at quarterback. Jeff Brom. This is a credit to Jeff Brom to put him this high. He's a big game coach, and Miller Moss is the type of pocket passer that he could kind of mold into a great quarterback. That's what he does. I have a ton of respect for Jeff Brom. They've got to be consistent, though. They have a tough schedule. I don't know if they're going to beat Clemson in Louisville. I don't know if they're going to go to SMU and win. I don't know if they're going to go to Miami and win. But they certainly can't lose games like Boston College or last year it was Stanford. You got to be perfect in those games, and then can you do enough in those tough games at Pittsburgh, some of those type games. I think either one of those teams could be a playoff team. I think Duke could be a playoff team. Again, all of these won't, but maybe one of them will as a second team from the ACC if it's not Miami. Duke they lose their quarterback, but that's by choice because they went to the portal and they invested big dollars to get Darian Mensah out of Tulane. They're really swinging their wallets around, and after stealing defensive end recruit from Clemson in the last class, who's now a freshman, now they're doing it through the portal too. Darian Mensah. I think this Duke team that won 9 games last year, I think they should be better. They got 11 players coming back, and what in theory is an upgraded quarterback. I think they should be very good. And then Georgia Tech. They play such a hard schedule every year that their record doesn't credit them for how good they were. They easily could have beat the Georgia Bulldogs in the season finale, 7-5 last year. But I think that understates how good they are. Haynes King, veteran quarterback coming back, 6th year, 3 at A&M, 3 now at Georgia Tech. He was banged up at the end of last year. Hopefully he's healthy now. Jamal Haynes, the running back, is back. I think this offense could be excellent. Should be towards the top of the ACC. Certainly top 6, but I could see him being better than that even. But the defense loses defensive coordinator Tyler Santucci. They could take a step back. That's why I really debated, should I have Georgia Tech? Should I have Baylor? Do I work in one of these Power 4 school or group of 5 schools like a Memphis or an Army? Eventually, I landed on Georgia Tech. I think it's a toss-up between a lot of these schools at the bottom, but I think Georgia Tech's going to be dangerous. It's going to be a tough game when Clemson goes to Atlanta. So that's my top 25 there. Do you think I have Clemson right? Should Clemson be 6 or 7 with Georgia? Is Arizona State too high? South Carolina 13. Does that feel fair to you? And of course, Penn State number 1, maybe the most interesting ranking of all. Let me know what you think. I'd love to hear it in the comments. And as always, go Tigers. Thank you to our sponsor, Ready Vets. If you live in the upstate and have a dog or cat that needs immediate care, Ready Vets is the place to go. If you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe.